מזמור לדוד. אדוני רואי לא אחסר. מנות שירביצני עמי מנוחות ינחלני. נפשי ישובב. ינחני במגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי הלך בגיץ על מוות, לא ירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. תשמת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדיפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. I've chanted for you the words of our 23rd Psalm. On these saddest days, these most difficult days when we are searching for comfort and strength, we often turn to the psalmist, and so I ask you now to recite these words with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in its going down we will remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter we will remember him. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring we will remember him. In the blueness of sky and in the warmth of summer we will remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn we will remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends we will remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember him. And when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember him. So long as we live, he too will live, for he is now a part of us, as we remember Donald Greene. To you, Rusty, and to his children, Jason, Jordan, Laurel, and Taylor, also to Tina and Matt, to his grandchildren, Nathaniel, Madison, and Ryan, to all the members of the family, and to so many dear and cherished friends. We've come together today to remember, but also to celebrate the life of your beloved Don. Our sages, in their wisdom, have taught us that birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity and from youth to age, from innocence to awareness, and from ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then, perhaps, to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, and from loneliness to love. From joy to gratitude, and from pain to compassion. From grief to understanding, and from fear to faith. From defeat to defeat to defeat. until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Don's journey began in 1945. He and his parents, Leo and Ida Greene, along with Donnie's older sister Lois of blessed memory, they grew up on Cleveland's East Side in University Heights. A product of the Cleveland Heights University Heights school system, Don was, without a doubt, ahead of his time. He was already a businessman while in his teens, and he was an entrepreneur before anyone even knew what that word meant. In his teenage years, he was working at his father's store, Bedford Beverage, and at the tender age of 15, Don was also working at Warner Swasey, a men's clothing store. And also at 15 years old, this young businessman was able to purchase his very first car, a 1958 Chevy Impala, a car that he would park in front of Cleveland Heights High School every single day, even though he would be ticketed every single day. Following his high school graduation, Don went to work in the vending business with his brother-in-law, and after a period of time, he decided to ask for a raise. When his request was answered with a resounding no, then he decided, I'll just leave and start my own company. And that he did. It was 1965 when Donnie began D&S Vending, his company which is still in operation today. Don's passion for work was enormous. He loved the business, and he worked diligently in every way imaginable. He married Susan Gilbert, and while this marriage ended in divorce, it did bring forth their beautiful son, Jason. Now, I want to fast forward just a little bit and move you ahead to 1979. Some of us here are old enough to remember it was the height of the disco era. And Don was out one evening at the ground floor. Who remembers the ground floor? Of course. A club located at the corner of Chagrin and Greene with its light-up disco floor. And sitting at the bar, he saw Rusty. The story goes that Don approached you, Rusty. He asked if he could buy you a drink. You told your first lie. I don't drink. And then he asked if you would like to dance. And you told your next lie. I don't dance. And then he said, well, I'll show you how to dance, which was, in fact, a lie on his behalf because he didn't dance very well, but the truth was you just weren't interested. Rusty, that evening you left the ground floor, and when you asked the valet to bring around your car, you went to tip the gentleman who said that the tip had already been taken care of by one Mr. Don Greene. You were also quite surprised the next day when somehow he figured out where you worked, what the phone number was, and he called you at your place of work. He explained that he'd be picking you up that evening at 8 p.m. and taking you to dinner at the Hunter's Hollow. To say that he was persistent, Rusty, well, that's an understatement. But there was that date, and then another, and then another. And 18 months later, Don and Rusty were married in Las Vegas. And then as Jordan and Laurel and Taylor entered into this world and joined their big brother Jason, the Greene family portrait became even more beautiful. Rusty, in your 38 years of married life, you and your Donnie, you journeyed through life together, and you also journeyed throughout the world, visiting places, exotic and beautiful places, your birthplace, the country of South Africa, and to the Orient, throughout Europe, Scandinavia, to Egypt and South America. There were many cruises and visits to so many different places across this great country. He just loved to travel with you, Rusty. And you were also blessed to have a wonderful group of friends to spend time with, whether you were dining out or just enjoying time at your home, raising a glass together. We know that Don had his loves, He loved business. He loved traveling. He loved cruising. He loved eating and drinking. He loved gambling. And his truest loves, his family, and of course you, Rusty. You shared with me, Rusty, your exact words. You said to me, "No one ever loved me as much as that man loved me." And how beautiful to feel that kind of love. And in speaking with Don's other loves, his children, they described their father as a man who was direct, a man with no filter, and a man who could always tell you like it was, for better or for worse. And while they said that their dad could not be characterized as warm and fuzzy, you always, always knew that you were loved. You said he was kind and generous and giving. He would give you, and anyone else for that matter, the shirt off his back. His 4 children knew that their father would do anything for them. Jason, Jordan, Laurel, and Taylor, they also grew to know a man who would help out a stranger in need, or a man who would help even rescue any one of his employees should they need his assistance or his guidance. Don's daughter-in-law, Tina, used the word loyal to describe Don. And his son-in-law, Matt, sketched a picture of a man who was compassionate. Matt, you recalled a story of a time when your father-in-law heard on the news. He was watching the news and he heard a story about a woman whose car was stolen. He was so moved by this particular story that he bought the woman a car. He bought a complete stranger a car. Jason and Jordan, working side by side with your father for all of your adult lives, must have been, of course, educational and exciting and challenging and sometimes maybe even difficult. But together, you realized his dream, and you were and still are keeping that dream alive. Jason, through the seriousness required in running the family business, you still commented on your dad's sense of humor. You said he was so funny, hilarious, and he brought laughter to so many. When I asked you if your father belonged to any clubs or organizations, you informed me that, like Groucho Marx, your dad said, "I would never join any club that would have me as a member." And Jordan, there were so many life lessons that your father passed on to you. He was always wanting to make sure that you were doing the right thing. Working side by side with your dad, you saw how much he cared about people, especially the employees. And you had this unique bond with your dad when it came to your shared love of classic cars. The beloved Don Jordan Museum, which housed all the cars and all the other collectibles, this was a special place for the two of you. Laurel, you mentioned to me your father's love for animals. He had a kind heart for the 4-legged creatures of this world. And you always had a dog as a member of your family growing up. And his love, Laurel, for animals is so strong that you and the family have requested that any contributions that might be made in memory of him, that they go directly to either the APL of Cleveland or the Geauga Rescue Village. It would have meant the world to your dad. And Taylor, you of course declared that you are your dad's favorite. I think everyone, when we were sitting around, agreed on that. Taylor, you said that you and your dad had the same love for cars that he and Jordan had, your love for pizza. And from listening to your stories, I know that your dad was the go-to guy. Taylor, you remembered a story that once when you were in 5th grade, there was a field trip. You and your entire grade were bused to a museum. When you got there, the gate was locked. Everything was closed up. And so you mentioned to your teachers that there might be an alternative, and so you were able to call your father. You explained to him the situation, and then that bus, all the buses were headed over to the warehouse, to your dad's collection. He saved the day. He said yes and saved the day. And this is how Don operated. Rusty and his 4 kids, and probably for that matter, everyone in this room, you all knew that Don was the man who could get things done. And when a problem arose, Donnie would simply say, "I've got it handled." And he did. Donald Greene was a collector of cars and guns and anything having to do with the 1950s. He loved those classic gasoline and oil signs. And speaking of signs, Rusty, you said the best gift that you ever received It was for your 10th wedding anniversary. Don researched high and low, far and wide, and he found the owner of that old ground floor sign, the place where you first met. He got the sign. They talked, perhaps argued a bit, and after a lot of convincing, wheeling and dealing, he purchased the sign and presented it to you, Rusty, to mark your first decade together as husband and wife. And of all of his collectibles, we know that Don's greatest treasures were all of you, friends and family. His friends will always recall a pal who cared. His buddy Bruce remembers a best friend who would go out of his way to help anyone. And Cindy, Bruce's wife, described to me a man who some might look at as a little bit quirky, but it was Don's quirkiness that proved to be so lovable and so endearing. And Don's family will never forget a husband, a father-in-law, and especially a grandfather who loved all of you more than words could possibly express. And to Donnie's grandchildren, to Nathaniel and to Madison and Ryan, the love and the pride that your grandpa felt for you, I hope you know that this is not measurable. You three were his most precious gems in the family crown. And so together, friends, we join, declaring with the sages of our people, Zichron Livrach. May the memory of Don Greene and the good deeds that he performed here in the land of the living, may these always be for a blessing. Amen. Our tradition teaches us that words which come from the heart enter directly to the heart. Two of his children have words from their heart they wish to share with us today, and so I first call on his daughter, Laurel.
So there are two great lessons that my dad taught me, and everyone that knows him. First, and most importantly, do not take shit from anyone. Secondly, that there are no limitations to anything that you want to do. With a little chutzpah and hard work, you can get it handled. He lived outside lines, norms, and rules. Saying you can't do that was like speaking Greek to him. I know that each and every one of us has a story about him that ends with, I can't believe he did that, or I can't believe he said that. A few phrases that never computed to Don Greene. You can't park there, it's not for sale, you can't go there, you can't do that, or you'll never make it. Not my dad. His unspoken confidence and results would say, watch me, every time. He was the ultimate underdog that prevailed beyond anyone's expectations, personally and professionally. Nothing was too hard, too rare, or too difficult to obtain or conquer. He was voted least likely to succeed in high school. It's just so fun. He would soon after start his own company, DNS Vending, and over 50 years later, it is still successful. When he attempted to get his driver's license and failed at 16, he simply thanked them, then got back in his car and drove away. After all, he'd been driving for years anyways. He was never told what to do or how to do it. It didn't faze him when someone said it isn't possible. There just wasn't anything he was afraid to do, or say for that matter. If he had a problem with you, he would tell you. He's as straightforward as you can get without any filter. He wasn't the kind of guy anyone would say they vaguely remember. Whether it was with business or his health, he worked very hard for a very long time. When everyone else thought he was ready to walk away from the table or cash in his chips, he would play another hand. He did things when he wanted to and when he felt like it all his life, and his illness and passing were no exception. When he was told almost 9 years ago that he had a terminal illness and that he would die within the next 2 years, he said calmly, and he would have expert doctors scratching their heads, bewildered for years, despite what any test results would say. And let's not get started on how well he followed doctors' orders. There are things in this world he really enjoyed: gambling, drinking, 50s memorabilia, a good James Bond movie, traveling, making money, a cold beer, and a slice of pizza, selling machines. But there was only one thing in this world that he truly loved: more than anything. It is the reason, other than the fact that he was stubborn as hell, why in the end, that when he couldn't do anything that he enjoyed, that he kept living for my mom. I think for the past 39 years, 38, almost 39, he wasn't 100% sure that he had won her over yet, because she liked to keep him on his toes. But in his last days, the most beautiful love story I've ever seen is seeing my mom take care of my dad. She took care of him every day and made sure he was never alone. The day he passed away, my mom came to his room on a Friday night, and it was just the two of them. And she watched TV with him, and she rubbed his feet. I can imagine as he laid there laughing at the show with her, knowing that she could be anywhere else, but she chose to be by his side in that smelly nursing home. I believe that he felt that he could finally let go, because he knew if she could still love him, after when everything was taken away from him, including his ability to do anything or go anywhere. When all that was left was an old sick man, he knew in that moment that she would love him unconditionally, forever. So he was able to close his eyes that night and rest in peace, knowing he got it handled. If he was here with us now, he would first want to know how much all this was costing him. This is so true, though. He would then tell us to pay attention, stop crying, and get outside on such a beautiful day. He would want to make sure that my mom is taken care of and is happy. What would make my mom really happy is if everyone came over and laughed like my dad always did and tell all the stories about the hilarious memories you have had with him. So get out all your crying now, because when we get to the house, it will be a party, one that my dad would have wanted to be at. One last thing. If there was something that he would have wanted you to do, do it. Life is too short, and he would say you should stop screwing around and do it already. So let's all try to have a little bit more Don Greene within us and a little less self-doubt. His legacy is to remind us all to be a little bolder, laugh a little louder, to work hard but not take everything too seriously, to try something new, to speak up a little bit more for ourselves and on the behalf of others, to give someone a second chance or even a third, like he always did, to remember to take walks, have a drink after work, put down your phone, smell the beautiful flowers, to be kind to animals, and of course, never forget to recycle. He's big on recycling. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's beautiful. Thank you, Laurel. I'd also like to call on his son, Jason.
First off, on behalf of the Greene family, I would like to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy days to join us here today. It really means a lot to us, and I'm sure my dad would be really proud. My dad was one tough son of a bitch. Just ask any of his employees that tried to ask for a raise. He was diagnosed with a rare heart disease that only 5,000 people in the world get. I only have a Beechwood education, so I never am able to pronounce the disease properly. In this disease, the main problem is you get a protein buildup around your heart. And of course, this is not good, because if it's not treated properly, it can harden, and then you have problems getting blood flow back and from through your heart. His doctor at the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Rue, had about 37 of these 5,000 people. So the disease is very rare, and since there's not a lot of funding or a lot of knowledge for it, there's really no idea on how to fix it or maintain it or treat it. So you have to basically kind of go through like some chemo treatments to try and do it. So we've kind of talked about this a few times. About 9 years ago, they gave him 5 years. There was a lot of ups and downs. There was hospital stays. There was some cruises mixed in. There was good times. There was bad. But he just kind of kept taking the hits and getting up off the canvas. You know, like a Jewish Rocky with no muscles. When it was all said and done with, the only two things he didn't have was a form of diabetes and Ebola. But he never complained. He dealt with the bad setbacks and little victories. The doctors routinely just shook their head and were wondering, how are you still walking in and coming back and forth? They would count him out time and time again. You know, a couple weeks later, he'd bounce back. And they sometimes would go through months or years of having really no additional issues. I was talking to Rusty when this happened on Saturday, and we were both under the impression that when he went there, that it was just something minor, and then fix him and then send him back to the stinky retirement place, like Laurel said. And it was really stinky. To say my father, Don Greene, was a unique and interesting person would be considered a major understatement. This is a man who would clip coupons from the Sunday Plain Dealer. Does anyone still read the newspaper nowadays? Anyway, he would clip these coupons and then take them to Mark's so he can save an extra few cents off a jar of 500 Tylenol. Mark Glassman, ironically, lives on his street. So you would have thought at some point in time, since they're friends, they could have worked out some kind of friends and family discount and saved himself all the hassle. Yet, he would routinely gamble. He would constantly go out to Atlantic City or Vegas. This was before Cleveland had casinos and Detroit and everything. And he would normally lose. The joke we had was, are the Browns going to win the Super Bowl, or is my dad going to win today at the casino? And we've all seen how the Browns have played the last 20 years, so you can just imagine how it went at the casino. Incidentally, Caesar's Palace currently has their flags at half staff upon hearing that my dad passed away. And in addition, they are naming a new hotel wing after him, mostly because of his generous donations he's given them for the past 4 to 5 decades. He was also very famous for his life lessons, whether you asked for them or not. Most of the time, no one asked for them. Of course, myself and my siblings got the majority of them. Some of them to this day, I have no clue. I've talked to people with 200 IQs. They don't know what the hell he was saying. But I guess some way he meant something. But I'm going to give you an example of one that panned out, actually. In 1984, he gave me a summer job, pretty much doing schlep work at our company, DNS Vending. I'd wash the machines, wrap the machines, paint some parts, child labor at its best. Every day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, I'd have to sweep the shop. During this time, we had about 40 mechanics or so, and they all smoked, mostly cigarettes. So there would be a ton of cigarette butts on the floor, trash, papers, and everything. So I basically would have to sweep all this crap up. Normally, at least once a day after I passed a certain spot, one of the smart-ass employees would say, "Hey, Donnie Jr., you missed one," and basically just take the cigarette butt as he's staring at me, dropping it on the floor, putting it into the ground. Okay, so I was told, don't do what you're supposed to do, take care of it. So I'd go back and I'd start sweeping, and at the same time wonder how much of this broomstick I could stick up this guy's ass. But I said nothing about it. At the end of the summer, my dad asked me why I thought he had me do these jobs. My 13-year-old response was, because you don't have anyone else to do it. So then after I shook my jaw after he cracked me, I said, how about, I don't know, what's the reason? He said, how long did it take you to sweep the floor? I said, 20 minutes. He said, okay, one of these days when you're running this place and you hire someone to do the job, and it takes them 40 minutes, they were dicking off, his word, for 20 minutes and working for 20 minutes. You would have done the job, you know how long it takes, So there should be no way that someone's able to say, you don't know how to do my job when I actually did it. So I was able to actually get one of a few ideas of what he was trying to get at. My dad and I weren't particularly close when I was growing up. My parents got divorced when I was 5, and a few years later, he started a new family with Rusty. For the most part, my dad and I were as opposite as you can get. As you know me, I love sports, I'm into sports. And my dad, it was kind of like that scene in Major League where the old lady asks Tom Berenger what team she plays for. And when she replies, the Indians, the old lady says, I didn't even know we still had a team. That was my dad with sports. On the flip side, he was in the cars, I knew 0.0. So in this case, I would be like Clark Griswold in the original Vacation when he gets the family truckster to get gas, and he's walking around the thing 2 or 3 times wondering the hell to put the gas in. That would be me. This is a true story. When my parents first got divorced, you had to write that paper at school. You know, what do you want to be when you grow up? So most kids put football player or astronaut or I don't know what the hell people's jobs were in 1970, but you know, I'm sure they weren't stockbrokers and social media experts. So I wrote a simple paper and basically said, I want to go to work with my dad. So my teacher was puzzled, and she decided to call my mom in with me to try and find out what was going on. So she sat us both down, and you know, the teacher's kind of in a nice way saying, you know, does your ex-husband work for the government? You know, is he a spy? Is he, you know, no one can know what he is? My mom's like, no, he's some schmuck that sells vending machines. And keep in mind, they were freshly divorced at that point in time. But I just thought it would be cool to go to work with my dad. We'd drive to work together, eat lunch together, and actually work together. And unlike most divorced kids, I actually did get to see him a couple times a week. But that's really what I wanted to do. He would always go off to work, and I'd say that's where I want to go to. So today, I'm very fortunate to live in a nice part of Solon. And ironically, all my neighbors are doctors, and I'm the schmuck that sells vending machine parts. My dad had a very interesting sense of humor. Nowhere as funny as me, of course, but here's an example. So as you know, my dad drove a Rolls Royce for many years. He had a few of them. Do you think maybe he was trying to compensate for something? Anyway, his license plate on the car was Vendit, like we put on his casket. So Vendit basically meant, you know, it was a reference to our vending machine business. So about 15 years ago, he kind of got tired of having this big, expensive vehicle that got 6 miles to the gallon, was in the shop every 2 or 3 months waiting on parts to come over from London. So he decided to downsize and purchased a Ford 500. And you know my dad, to save a couple of dollars, he transferred the license plate from the Rolls-Royce Vendit to the Ford 500 Vendit. So a couple weeks later, a customer of ours is driving around Shaker Heights. So he calls my dad and said, what's going on? My dad didn't miss a beat. He said, I had a bad year. We both had a common like, money. He had a lot, and I wanted some. Very much. So he put that work ethic in me to get up every day and go to work. Your customers don't give a shit that you're sick. Go to work. They don't want to hear that your dog died, that your girlfriend broke up with you. Put on a happy face, get to work, sell. They expect you to be there. So there were times in the 90s that I was kind of at a pay level of, like when that Kathy Lee Gifford got busted for that sweatshop she was running to sell that crap at Walmart. That was kind of my pay rate for a couple years, but I get it. But the important thing is my dad was not one of those dads that bankrolled his kids. There was zero doubt in my mind that if I did not work hard and produce, I would be canned. So he and I shared that same work ethic. And one of his expressions was, the harder I work, the luckier I get. To this day, when I go on vacation with my family and we're standing at line at Disneyland to get on It's a Small World, and my phone rings, I'm going to get it. You know, they're not always thrilled about it, but I was taught to keep my customers happy, because without them, I wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't have been in business for 53 years. So to all the customers of ours that came here today, I do want to thank you for all the business you've given us all these years, and rest assured you will continue to be treated with the same customer service that you've been accustomed to. Some of you I've known for 30 years, and I know I wouldn't be here without you. So, in the end, I got what I wanted to do when I wrote that paper when I was 6 years old. I got to go to work with my dad. Those of you who know me know I'm completely honest, almost to a fault. And since we're in a place of worship, I figure I would be perfectly honest and say 1A would have been to play center field for the Indians, but they stopped taking my calls. You get to Game 7 of the World Series and you think you can do whatever the hell you want. But 1B didn't turn out to be too bad either. For those of you over 50, which looking out here is the majority of the people, there is a new social media platform, well, not too new. It's called Twitter. Basically, there's a way for you to write whatever's on your mind in 144 characters or less. Most of the time, it's something that you probably wouldn't say to someone's face, but you could hide behind your computer or give yourself some weird name and no one really knows who the hell you are. Most athletes, actors, and musicians have these so they can kind of give information to their fan base. And normally what they put out is something stupid. And really, for the most part, no one gives a shit about what they're saying. Most of the time, these tweets are useless thoughts or bragging. Most of the time, they contain an emoji. I feel like I'm in class here. An emoji, by definition, is a small digital image or icon used to express an idea or emotion in digital communication. So here's a couple examples. I'm at Morton's Steakhouse, smiley face emoji. I'm at the proctologist getting a colonoscopy, sad face emoji. Brian Shaw, you suck. How the hell could you have thrown that pitch to Chris Davis to the A's Saturday night that he hit off for a walk-off home run? Middle finger emoji. Hey, Khloe Kardashian, thanks for screwing up Tristan Thompson during the NBA Finals. We could have gotten better production from Caitlyn Jenner. I hope your ass gets as big as your sister's Kim. Double middle finger emoji. But I digress. Anyway, our crack staff of employees at DNS Vending created a Twitter account, appropriately called Boss Man Says. In it, they put some of the better words of wisdom and exciting anecdotes that would roll off his tongue throughout the years. Kind of think Larry David of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Please keep in mind that my father had no filter. Pretty much whatever he said from his mind had no thought in it whatsoever, and didn't care if it could be mean, inconsiderate, disrespectful, not politically correct, and in most instances, some form of all those involved. These are all 100% true stories or things that had happened. Some of you were either told these face-to-face or over the phone, and you know for a fact that these are true. So for those of you that were recipients of these pearls of knowledge, I am leaving your name out to protect the innocent or harmed, however you want to look at it. I will forewarn you that there might be some unsuitable language. Who are we kidding? There's going to be unsuitable language. So if there's some youngsters out there, this might be a good time for a bathroom break. Don't worry about my kids. Of course, they first heard these words from their grandfather, much like the same I heard them in 1976. Some of these I'll kind of lay out the scenario so you kind of know, because some of these need a little bit of a, this is why this happened. Others are just straight off, no problem, no issue. So, and these are in no particular order. Are you losing more weight? Your butt looks smaller. I'm like an asshole. I've got an opinion on everything. If he buys and pays, I could give a shit less if he's a homosexual. Okay, so this was said to two guys who had dated the same girl in the past. That's a good one. All right, we'll skip that one. I'll say that one for the house. The doctor did some blood work today to make sure the first test wasn't a positive negative. This was for one of his sons. Don't fall in love. You're already leaving early for lunch. In other words, don't take a long lunch with the sales rep. You're only still married because you're a wimp. This also was directed at one of his sons. He's not an asshole. He just doesn't know any better. You can't make chicken soup out of chicken shit. Hold the phone a little closer to the machine. I'll take a look and reply to a client who wants to know how much it would be to fix their vending machine. Now it's funny because you can actually take a picture with your phone. This was to a new employee that we hired. You remind me of my ex-wife. She didn't know much about anything either. More, you say? I'll give two more. You're ruining my fun. I don't fancy myself a weak man, but you try cutting the steak, to the waiter. One of his daughters called. Hi, Dad, it's my dad. How did you get this number? And how many times have I told you, I'm not your dad? Click. This was also to one of our employees who had dated a ticket broker. Are you still stooping the guy that sells the tickets? Clients, you will go to hell for charging another Jew finance charges. My dad's response, but I recycle. To an employee of 20 years, you look different today. What did you do, wash your hair? Again, if you know my dad, these are all there. And this is my favorite, and we'll end on this one. So he had gone over to a client and seen a picture, and he noticed that the husband and the wife had 11 kids. So my dad's response was, you know, you can lick it every once in a while. So my dad was very unique. I know I would not be anywhere in this situation without him. When you guys come over to the house later, you know, it's very important that we honor who he was and laugh and joke and not kind of go over there where everything is going to be, you know, sad and glum. So again, appreciate you all coming out, and thank you.
When I come to the end of the road and the sun has set for me, I want no rights in a gloom-filled room. Why cry for a soul set free? Miss me a little, but not too long, and not with your head bowed low. Remember the love that we once shared. Miss me, but let me go. For this is a journey we all must take, and each must go alone. It's all a step on the Master's plan, a step on the road to home. When you are lonely and sick at heart, go to the friends we knew and bury your sorrows in doing good deeds. Miss me, but let me go. We rise now for the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, shochen במרומים, המסי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוכר הרקיע מסירים. את נשמת יקירנו דוד, שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן, תחיה מנוחתו. ענה בחרחמים מסתירהו, בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, ותתרור בתרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן. O merciful God, who dwells on high, who is full of compassion, grant perfect rest beneath the shelter of your divine presence among the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament. To our dear departed Don Greene, who has gone now to his eternal home, may his soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life, and grant that his memory inspire us to noble and consecrated living. And to this we answer, Amen. Friends, as I mentioned earlier, anyone wishing to make a contribution in memory of Don, the family has suggested that you consider either Geauga Rescue Village, the Cleveland APL, or of course a charity of your choice. Following our internment at Lakeview Cemetery, the family will receive visitors from 2 until 6 p.m. today at the residence at 50 Easton in Moreland Hills. On behalf of Rusty, the children, and the entire family, we thank you for your love and support on this important day.